All right, welcome to the end of the lectures on chapter 13. We talked last, what would it be, on Thursday. We began our chapter on distribution, and we kind of showed some examples on the board, and I thought we had some good discussion over some of the advantages and disadvantages. So if you haven't done this yet, I would go to the content on Blackboard and print out the slides for chapter 13. So you can stop and go ahead and do that. Otherwise, what we're going to start on, what would be slide 11, is where we kind of ended class. And some of these next slides you've already heard me talk about in class, so we'll kind of go over them pretty quickly, but I talked more than I did move the PowerPoint slides through. So we ended class on Thursday kind of talking about what an agent does and how they don't take ownership. And I gave the example when I played professional basketball that they didn't buy me and then sell me. They basically tried to bring two parties together. And so that's really one of the big differences between a retailer, a wholesaler, and an agent, as you see on slide number 11, is that agents don't take title to the good. They just connect those people. So slide 12 is logistics, which is really just the term talking about how efficiently goods and services can be delivered. And so when you hear that, it's basically looking at ways to, well, we may have a distribution channel. How can we do that more efficiently, and how can we do that better? And I put a YouTube clip on there, just a little song to get in your head, the UPS logistics song. But it's becoming more and more important as there's global trade, competition has increased. Efficiency is at a premium, and so having a system, especially with the analytics that we have with our sales systems, to be able to deliver products and services efficiently is becoming kind of a must. It's not even something that is something that's creating an advantage. It's putting those out of business that can no longer do it. Slide 13 is what we talked about in class as well, which is channel structure. So how do you structure your channel if you are going to produce a good? Do you sell it directly? Do you have a wholesaler? Do you have a retailer? So if you bump ahead to slide 15, because slide 14 is just the definition of a direct channel, which would be producer to consumer, or end user would be another way that I like to think of it. If you look at 15, there are four main types of structures that you could see, which is a direct channel, which we talked about, a retailer, where you go from producer to retailer, then to consumer. You have wholesaler channel, and then you have agent broker. And so there's nothing right or wrong about each of those structures, but they're different, and they're different for different reasons. And so we're going to talk in this next section kind of about choosing what kind of structure you'd follow. And this is for the producer, but it's also for the retailer, because sometimes a system becomes integrated. And I gave the example of the hog market, how the packers have gone into owning the hogs versus the farmers owning the hogs. And there are reasons for that, and there are sometimes good reasons, and there are sometimes reasons that end up causing pain in the end for the industry. So why don't we jump then to slide 17, which is really just kind of moving into the discussion of how do we choose the strategy that we're going to follow. So if we go back to kind of the beginning of this course even is, we talk about product, price, promotion, then we talk about place and distribution, and we're trying to create mutually beneficial exchanges. And so our distribution strategy has to match that. It has to create value for the end user. It needs to be done in an efficient way that still helps us reach our organizational objectives. And so really what it comes down to, and this is slide 18, is deciding between what kind of channel choice you're going to use and the market, product, and producer factors that influence that, and then also the distribution intensity. So how are you going to do, what kind of product do you have, and how does that impact the intensity of the distribution that we have? And not only does it impact based on the product that you have, what do your consumers want? How does that affect your brand? How do they view that? Do they view that as being an exclusive product, or it's something that could be accessed anywhere? So first of all, we're going to look at channel choice, and that's going back to that structure that we talked about. Do we go direct? Do we go through a retailer? What's the best approach? And there are three factors that influence that. And the first one being market factors. So if you look on slide 19 there, the market factors is the size of the market, the geographic location, the customer profile. So if you think about how the market would impact it, how geographically dispersed is our market? How large is the market? What are our customer profile? What are they looking for in a product? And that will impact what kind of distribution strategy we're going to follow. If we have a very dispersed geographic market, it's not going to help us to open retail stores in Iowa. We may need to get online. We may need to follow, maybe a direct will work better, but then how do we funnel them to us? So maybe we have a direct and maybe also some retail stores that we select. Well, what about these retail stores? If I select Scheels, for example, Scheels may only be a Midwest store. There's stores that are non-regional, that are national stores. Do we want to get into a Walmart? Well, what are the advantages, disadvantages? Is that where our customers are looking to get that product from or not? So market factors are definitely something that you need to think about, like, what is the market, who is the market, where are they buying it, and that will impact what kind of channel structure or strategy that we pursue. The second factor outside of the actual market is the actual product. So this is slide 20, and we look at here, first one that I look at is product complexity. We talked about this when we looked at packaging, and we talked about the phones that are like the S9 package that I have. Well, that can be bought online. In fact, I bought an S9 for my wife online on Black Friday, partly because I had experience with my S8 and I know what I'm doing with the phone, and I know how to turn it on, start it, get it uploaded, and do those things. But for some people, they want actually to have somebody come and explain to them what kind of phone they should choose. So how complex the product is, but at the same time, you have to understand who the customer is and do they understand it? Is it really that complex? Well, maybe not. How about computers? Same thing. There may be some people, some target markets that would view a cell phone as complex and others that wouldn't. And so this is where you may need a multiple channel strategy, where Verizon says, well, we need to have our stores because if we have an older demographic who's not as knowledgeable about the products, they may need some extra help. They may need some extra questions answered. Well, but at the same time, you got a generation that's coming up that says, I don't really want to go to the store, be pressured. I know what I want. I've looked at the reviews. This is what I'd like. And so they need to offer that online and make that convenient for them as well. And so product complexity is one of those things that would impact that. Product price, typically the higher the cost, the probably more involvement that there's going to be. You may need to have a different promotional and distribution strategy versus having something like a pack of gum where you're probably going to want that wherever people can get it because it's a convenience product and hence they would like it when, wherever versus having it in less places. Product life cycle, we didn't hit a ton on that in chapter 10. And we would have in chapter 11 had this course been a full semester course. But really just talking about where in the product life cycle is it. Is it new or is it something everybody knows about? When it's new, it's probably less likely that it's everywhere because people don't know about it. But as it goes into the maturity phase of the product life cycle, it's probably going to have a wider distribution. And then at the end of the life cycle, when not as many people either know about it or want it, it's going to probably diminish the distribution intensity. Then the last one here is producer factors. And a lot of this has to do, again, with the control that you like to have over that. So if you're the producer, and we're looking at producer factors, and you go direct to the customer, you are going to control the brand, you're going to control the price, you're going to control a lot of factors. The more intermediaries that you introduce into that distribution channel, the greater chance that you're going to lose control. And I think that's just intuitive that the more people are involved, the more different things they can do. So maybe you're a producer and you have what would be a premium product in your mind and you offer it and they offer it at a discount. Well, you're not thrilled about that because that takes away the value proposition of you being a premium product. At the same time, they may feel like that's necessary in order to generate sales or to get people in the store. So now there's a little bit of conflict, which we'll talk about. But when you introduce these intermediaries and you go with that channel structure, there's a greater chance that you're going to lose control. So how comfortable are you with not having control over the channel? So that is some of the factors that you're going to consider when you think about your channel structure. And then also the next part of that is your distribution intensity. And a lot of this, again, it's a really comprehensive way to look at the value that you're proposing to your customers. If you're a premium product, we look at these three different distribution intensities. You're probably going to go with exclusive because you want them to know that they have to work hard to get this. There are very few of them. I think of like an IKEA. People like that, and it's not necessarily even a pricing thing, but it's the way that they do business, the way that they distribute. You can either get it online or you're going to have to drive up to Minneapolis to get it. You can't go to Sioux City, Sioux Falls, and those sorts of places. You're going to have to go to a major city, and they've also found that probably their target market is in those. So in many ways, it's exclusive. However, you can order it online as well. So it may not be as exclusive because they have that online part. So you may, again, these are kind of on a continuum. This isn't necessarily this is selective, this is exclusive, this is intense, but it's on a continuum from being exclusive, where you can only get it in one or two places, to intensive. Again, look at the difference between buying a BMW and buying a pack of gum. You can buy a pack of gum anywhere. That would be an intensive distribution strategy, where you're going to try to get it in as many places as you can, and that's more reflective of a convenience product than it is necessarily a complex, high involvement product where there's going to be a lot of thought, time, and effort put into purchasing the BMW. And so your distribution strategy on that continuum from being a intense product all the way to being an exclusive product is going to vary depending on that product. It's going to vary depending on the target market, your goals, and how much control you'd like to have over the channel. And so those are the types of things that businesses are thinking about as to why they would necessarily offer it in that particular way. And so those are the levels of distribution intensity, and that's from slide 22. Slide 23 kind of gives kind of some more description over the levels of distribution intensity. Where we have intensive, you're going to focus on mass market, and there's a ton of intermediaries. Selective, it's a shopping or specialty good with several opportunities or places for you to purchase it, maybe online. This would be that multi-distribution strategy. And then exclusive, you're working with a single intermediary, specialty goods, and there's only one intermediary that you can reach it at. So that kind of talks again about just, hey, what strategy are you going to take as a business with your distribution of your product, and what makes sense based on those things: your market, which includes your target market, your product, and the producer itself, and then looking at what kind of distribution intensity you have, which is also reflective of those factors as well. So if you think about those channels, you got direct channel, you got that retailer channel, you got the wholesaler and then retailer and then agent and broker. There is going to be, if you think about this, the more people you involve, and this is the case in life, the more people you involve, the more intermediaries you involve, the greater the chance that there's going to be conflict. If you go a direct channel, probably not going to have any chance of being in conflict because you're going directly from the producer to the consumer. But now if we had a retailer and we had multiple retailers, so if you're selling a product that's sold at both Target and Walmart, you can imagine that there's going to be times where Target and Walmart are going to feel like one or the other is getting a better deal from you. Well, why are you getting it cheaper from them? Why are you letting them run a special but not let us run a special? You see that in a lot of different things, and this is why even places like Sodexo, who used to be on campus with food, would restrict anybody else from bringing food on campus. We're the only ones that could bring food on campus. And so they would say, hey, well, you're not going to be able to bring food. I don't want this. And there's conflict between Northwestern potentially and Sodexo, who says, hey, we'd like to bring on Pizza Ranch. Well, you can't bring on Pizza Ranch. You have to have Sodexo pizza. Okay? And so there's this conflict between Northwestern, who could have delivered the food services to its students. They hire somebody to do that. Okay? And they're distributing their food in that way. Well, there can potentially be conflict there. And I'm probably getting ahead of myself here a little bit because we're talking a little bit more about these in the next slides here. But this also can create opportunities for partnerships. So you have conflict on one end, then you also have partnerships. Because what ends up happening is, if these two companies within the channel don't cooperate with each other, it's probably not going to be good for either of them. I think the book talks a little bit about a car manufacturer and Michelin, their tire distributor, okay, or who they buy their tires from. If they don't communicate on how many tires they think they're going to need based on projected sales for the next year, and let's just say it's Ford doesn't communicate with Michelin, well, Michelin then may overproduce tires, and they're going to have all these extra tires at a loss, and they're going to have to either take a loss or charge more for the tires that they sell to try to make up for it. And so then Ford maybe says, well, then we're going to get it from somewhere else, and then Michelin cuts a deal, and now there's conflict, versus them talking to each other and saying, hey, this is what we're anticipating for car sales next year. We're probably looking at this many tires that we need. And so then there can be some partnerships. An arm's length type of situation would be one in which they aren't sharing information, and they're probably looking for only their best interest. Okay? Integrated would mean they are very connected. They are sharing a ton of information. There can be some danger in this because once you give the information to the other, then Ford might go ahead and buy Michelin because they're like, well, we don't need you anymore because we know. And at the same time, Michelin might find out more about Ford and may pursue going that direction with cars or something like that. So sometimes that can be very, very good, but it can also be dangerous because you're sharing information with this other entity that could potentially compete with you if they wanted to. And then you also have cooperative, which is not so, it's kind of in between arm's length and an integrated system of distribution between these two, where they're going to share some information but not everything. And so basically you're going to look at those definitions on the next slides, and you can look at the little spokes. That's slides 26, 27, 28. Then I already talked a little bit about the next slides. If you take a peek there with managing channel relationships, 29 and 30, talking about some of the conflict and relationships, that any type of relationship there can potentially be conflict, power, control, and each member of the distribution channel can press or push or use their power or leverage to influence the other, whether that's a pricing one, whether that's a quality initiative that they say, well, we need this, otherwise we're not going to buy from you. Walmart is notorious for being able to drive down the prices of the products that they buy and just say, hey, we are Walmart, we want you in the store, but we want it at this price, where another retailer might sell the same thing. So you might see the same product in Ace Hardware as you do in Walmart, but it's cheaper in Walmart because Walmart can drive those prices by size and by channel power, where your mom and pop store may have a harder time doing that because they can't get power enough to do that, which is why a lot of hardware stores, instead of just being, Brandon's hardware store, it's Kopetsky's hardware store, it's Kopetsky's Ace, because they go together so that they can get some power on some of the distributors of those products. Yeah, and so then there can be control, there can be power, and then there can be conflict, and we talked about those things. So sometimes there's vertical conflict within the channel structure, sometimes there's horizontal. I gave you the example of, hey, if you're a producer of any good and service and you're selling at Target and Walmart, those two may fight with each other. There may be conflict within each other. I gave the example, or I told you I used to sell basketball hoops. Well, I sell basketball hoops and Scheels sells basketball hoops, and I may lower my price and Scheels may not be very happy, and so they go to Goal Setter and say, hey, lower your price, and I say, no, I'm not going to lower my price. Well, they say, well, then we don't want to have Goal Setter, so Goal Setter goes back to Scheels and can push one of the intermediaries out of that. The last things here that we talk about, if you go to slides 35 and 36, it's really an introduction into services. So it's not just goods, it's also services, talking about distribution in the place of services. And so we're not going to hit on this a ton in this course, but if you think about it as well, and you go to slide 37, it talks about those 5 different service qualities, which the ones that you're thinking about for distribution most often are reliability and responsiveness. How reliable is a distribution, and how quickly can they get the product or service, in this case, to them, and then trying to maximize those things. There are 2 other things in the course in this chapter on global distribution. We're not going to talk a lot about that, and there's some terms on injustice. We're not going to spend time on those as well. But hopefully this gives you a more of a idea of distribution, place, and how it fits in the marketing mix, and how it reflects on a lot of the other factors that are in the marketing mix. What kind of product it is, well, it's going to impact the distribution. Well, what kind of promotion are we going to do? depends on what kind of distribution. If we have just a distribution that's direct and it's online, we're probably not going to, have advertisements that get people to go into stores. We're going to try to do online advertising because we need people to buy it online. So our promotion is impacted by our distribution, and our distribution is impacted by our product, and our pricing is impacted by how many intermediaries they have, because if we have more intermediaries, there's a greater chance that we're going to have higher prices because there's more of these people taking a cut for the services that they do. So they're all related. They're all connected within the marketing mix to try to create value for the customers, and do it in a way that can compete with the other people that are trying to do the same thing. So that's the end of chapter 13. We'll see you on Tuesday for the start of chapter on 16, which is promotion.